Well, greetings again. Today we're going to take a look at this subject matter called the separation of powers doctrine. As you follow along with me on your course outline, we're going to pick up the subjects then today of the U.S. Constitution, the Idaho State Constitution, and legislative, executive, and judicial powers. Remember that this course is outlined now in 30 lessons by a friend of mine who is an attorney, a lawyer, a man that helped me win the very first cases I ever did. The first 5 cases we did were 3 against OSHA, 1 against the EPA, and 1 against the IRS. We won 5 out of 5, or I should say my friend helped me win 5 out of 5. And when we decided to put this course together and to try to teach a layman how to use law, how to go into that courtroom and win a case in criminal law, what does a person have to know? Well, there's some academic knowledge, and there's some practical application. That is, can you speak? Do you know what to say, and then can you say it? Well, this thing of the separation of powers doctrine and whether or not you know what to say and whether or not you can say it will depend upon whether or not you know and understand the contract. Let me illustrate a fact or a point to you here. Let's suppose that you entered into a contract to deliver 5,000 bales of hay to a man 3 states away. And you are agreeing to deliver the hay in bales weighing from 100 to 150 pounds, and that you're expecting to get paid $10,000, and that the delivery date is expected to be on the 24th of July, that the type of hay is expected to be alfalfa, and let's say there were 24 other stipulated conditions in the transaction. You write it up here on a piece of paper, everybody signs it, and this thing isn't going to be executed for 6 months. Over the period of time, everyone has a lapse in memory, and then one day you get a call on about the 15th of July, and the man says, "Are you going to make delivery on or about the 24th of July?" "Oh yeah, I'll be there. Don't worry about it." Now, you show up with hay that weighs 90 pounds to the bale. You show up on the 1st of August. You show up with a bill of $14,440. The hay is moldy and wet, and it's not alfalfa, it's grass, and it's clover. Do you suppose that your customer, this man that you entered into the contract with, is going to be very happy with the terms and conditions of your performance? Well, not only wouldn't I be very happy with the terms and conditions of your performance, I would take you to court. Here I have this Constitution. Now remember, you should have one of these in your kit. If not, then we're going to include it in this lesson. And the reason we like this particular little Constitution, it comes from the American Legion, so let me plug that fine organization of patriots and veterans from our foreign wars. And they put this out for a donation. I don't know what we pay for these, but I'd say it's probably 50 cents or $1 or something on that order. That's your United States Constitution. And that's included in this lesson. And then I want you to take a look here at your State of Idaho Constitution. Now for you, those of you who are in other states, you may be in Illinois or Maine or Texas or California, you'll have to get your Constitution from your state, because that Constitution is the contract that you made with your government officials. This is a grant of power from you to them. The mistaken notion is that the constitutions are a grant of power from the government to the citizen, or a grant of rights from the government to the citizen, or a grant of privilege, permission to do something that would otherwise be illegal, from the government to the citizen. That is absolute poppycock. The Constitution of the United States, and if you'll open please with me to this thing called the Declaration of Independence. There came a point in time when some people got together and they said, we've got some problems. And among those problems, they began here on page 3 of this little booklet. Follow along if you will, please. They said that when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitles them, these people recognized that there was a power called God. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So they said, you know, we've got a problem, and what we want to do is to lay it out in spades so that everyone in the world and every nation can see what our beef is. And then we're going to write up a contract. And in that contract, we're going to recognize that there are certain rights. There are an equal station, a separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God, they're saying that God has entitled us to. So let's take a look at the order or the chain of power that our founding fathers believed was the natural order of things. First, they recognized God. Next, they recognized man. Next, they founded a constitution or a contract which authorized and enabled them then for the one purpose of protecting life, liberty, and property to formulate a contract called the Constitution, which would create or perform or make a government which would function. And a government is simply people who are servants, public servants. And then the government creates, or it has the power, it's granted the power to hire the individuals to carry out the government's function of protecting life, liberty, and property. So you got God, man, the Constitution, then government, and then bureaucrat, in that order. But today we have something different than that. What we have is the bureaucrat who's up on top of the pile having direct association and communication with the people. He's the building inspector that comes out and says, where's your permit? He doesn't come out and ask you, how's the weather and how's your house coming along and are you having any problems and are you able to pay your bills, and I'm happy to see that this vacant lot is now being put to some kind of a use, and have a nice day, and is there anything I can do to help? He comes out and he says, I want to see your permit and I want to see your permission from your government to do whatever it is that you're doing with your own land and your own property and your own money. And I contend that the pecking order is upside down. That what we have is the bureaucrat first, and then we have government, and then we have man, and then we have our Constitution. And I'm not even sure that the last thing in order is God, because I don't think God ever comes into the picture, with the exception of swearing an oath in the courtroom, which is absolutely forbidden and shouldn't be done, but then that's another subject, and maybe I'll get to that a little later. Then we find that our bureaucrats are hauling us into courts to prosecute us with these things called informations and complaints, and if I have a little time, I'm going to tell you about these informations and complaints illegally and unlawfully. And then I want to talk to you about our legislature that is out here passing laws that they do every and anything except protect our lives, our liberties, and our properties. And then I want to talk to you about our executive branch of government, which is out here busily carrying out these king's statutes, which are designed to eat out our substance with these thousands of officers. And talking about eating out your substance here, let me turn over here. You see, one of these problems that our founding fathers had was over here on page 5, which is about halfway down, where it says, he has erected. Follow along here, would you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down from the top, page 5, your little Constitution booklet. This guy, King George, was doing then what our government is doing now. He has erected a multitude of new offices and has sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and to eat out their substance. I contend that what we're witnessing today with all of these bureaucracies is the exact same thing that King George was doing. There isn't anything different between 1770 and 1970. They're just doing the same thing. They're just hanging different labels and different names on it and call it freedom and democracy and whatever, other names you want to hang on it to make it sound good, make the slaves feel like that everything's honky-dory and that there aren't any problems and that you're really a free man. Well, what we have here then is a contract. And the terms and conditions of the contract tell the parties that are involved in the contract what they can do, what they can't do, what they're prohibited from, what discretions they have, and if they have any complaints about the contract, how that contract can be amended or changed. Now, I'm not going to read to you the entirety of the contract because to sit here and give you a lesson in the Constitution and how it's worded and what it means and all would take probably 3 or 4 lessons of and by itself, and I'm sure that just sitting here reading the Constitution of and by itself without any particular reason or format would become so boring you couldn't sit here and watch me that long because I'm pretty ugly anyway and I'm not all that exciting, so and I can't keep up with John Wayne. But let me start off here in the very beginning of our Constitution, and I'm going to run through here and I'm going to hit some highlights for you, and I'm going to tell you how you must learn and understand what your basic rights are. And the way to get an understanding of how the Constitution works and what your basic rights are is simple. I'm going to show you, maybe when you went to high school you were just really uptight if you did any constitutional study or any civics work at all. I'm going to show you how to make it easy, simple, exciting, and interesting. This little book is about 40 pages long in its totality. Go get in the bathtub, turn on the hot water with your big toe, lean back, relax, and read the little book. Don't try to memorize it. Take with you a black pen, and every time you come to a section that is exactly the opposite from what you've always believed or assumed to be true, underline it. When you get to page 40, turn back to page 1 and see how many lines that you've underlined that you now have had at least exposed to your mind that are exactly different or something new and unique that you never knew, never dreamed existed. And I think the first thing that you're going to underline is up here in the very first page here where it's on page 9, where it says, "We the people of the United States in order to form a more perfect union." Do you understand the import of those words? We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain, underline the words, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Let me ask you the question. Who wrote this contract? Who proposed the terms and conditions? Is this then, in the preamble to the Constitution, a grant of authority and power from an all-powerful government who's going to give you some permission to do something? Or is this a contract written by you and I to tell our government officials where the bear shits and that's where it's at? Now, if that sounds crude to you and you can't stand it, well then, you better turn this off, because what we're getting into here is the reassertion of our rights that we have abrogated. You know, in the book Legal Quotations, quote number 30, you have to be a belligerent claimant in person. You know, a spineless wimp isn't going to be able to go into a courtroom or go talk to a public official or anybody else and assert and demand his rights. You know, the average sheeple out here wants to go to a lawyer or go pay somebody to go in and assert and get his rights for him. If I'll go out like an Alexander Solzhenitsyn and I'll sacrifice myself, and if I'll go to prison or a prison camp, and if I'll do this, if I'll go up and expose myself to the pains and penalties and the problems that government agents are going to put upon me, you then will accept the benefits that come from it. Reminds me of the little red hen. You know, if the little red hen will go out and sow and grow and reap and grind and knead and bake, everybody else will come in and eat. Well, your Constitution is just about like that. And the very first thing that we learn on page 9 is that this isn't a grant of power from our government to us. This is a grant of power from us to our government. Now in Article 1, it's a pretty long section here. And it talks about the legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. So there's your Senate and House. And it tells a story. It tells an interesting story about how the Congress works. It doesn't tell a story about what you read in your newspapers is going on in Washington. It reads like a story that tells you the way it's supposed to work. But then if you've never read the contract, then you don't know whether that hay is supposed to come on the 24th of July, the 1st of August, or on the 15th of September. And so until you read the terms and conditions of the contract, you're not going to know whether or not you're being gypped, whether or not this contract is being fulfilled pursuant to your agreement. That's all it is. You know, all this constitutional law is all about is reading the contract and saying, hey, joker, I didn't authorize you to do that. I told you I wanted you to do this. Now, why is it that you're breaking the law? Because, see, this is law. This is called the highest law of the land. If I have a little time here, I'll quote to you Marbury versus Madison. In any event, I want you to note that down. Remember, Marbury versus Madison is one of those landmark cases that is an absolute must for you to read. And in the Marbury case, John Marshall, our Chief Justice in 1803, said this Constitution is a superior document. Now I want you to turn over here to what's called the Supremacy Clause. See if I can find the page. Yes, it's on page... Well, let's see if I can find the page. Here we go. We're getting closer now. It's about page 25. No, it's on page 24. Turn over to page 24 where it says Article 6. This Constitution, that's the second paragraph, about two-thirds of the way down the page, page 24, says this Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made, that's future tense, whatever laws we're going to make in the future, in pursuance thereof, that's in pursuance of this Constitution, and all treaties made or which shall be made, whatever's made today or yesterday or is going to be made tomorrow, under the authority of the United States, comma, shall be the supreme law of the land. Yeah, that's right. There's your first shock. I want you to look at this on page 24. The supreme law of the land is in this little 40-page document. That's the contract. I don't care how many words, I don't care how many books have been written, I don't care how many commentaries, I don't care how many aisles and aisles of books and statutes and public laws and all the rest of the BS that goes with it. When you get down on the bottom line, these 40 pages are the supreme law of the land. Now, to listen to a lawyer talk to you for a few minutes will make you go little, because you won't be, you'll sit here and go, well, our biggest problem is that we're functional illiterates that come out of the public schools. So here you've got the supreme law of the land. I didn't write that, folks. That was written in 1787. If you'll flip over here to page 25, isn't there a date on here? Or is it on page 26? I think it was September. Here we go. In convention, Monday, September 17th, 1787. I got on the scene in 1939, so I don't want you to say that George Gordon said that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, because it was around a long time before I ever came on the scene. In fact, I was 37 years old before I knew that this was the supreme law of the land, and I'm 43 now, so I've only known it for 6 years. Show you how dumb I am. Over here on page 9, I want you to follow through. Remember, we talked a little bit about status. Remember that subject of status and subject and member and slave and corporations and associations and foundations and trusts, etc. I think I mentioned this before, but I think it's worth mentioning again, because as we read along, we're going to find out that these founding fathers had some kind of a notion or an idea that all men aren't equal, that there are some men that have certain duties and capacities that other men don't have. Let me give you an illustration, If you put me out there on the baseball diamond and you said, I want you to pitch a few innings of ball against the New York Yankees, I don't think I'd function very well or for very long. I don't think I'm equal to Sandy Koufax or any of these old-timey famous pitchers, you know, that have gone down in the annals and the history of baseball. And I don't think I'm equal to Wilt the Stilt Chamberlain. I don't think I can dunk those balls through those netted hoops like he can. And I'll just bet you he doesn't know the Constitution like I do. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm just saying that I've spent a little time, effort, and energy reading this, and I want you to take a look with me here on page 9 at the bottom of the page, and I want you to see an abstract of 6 categories or types of persons that are mentioned. And I want you to underline that because this is real strange. It says representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states. So the subject matter of this paragraph is direct taxes being apportioned among the states, which may be included within this union. So there could be 13 or 25 or 39 or 50 states, according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined. You're going to determine this tax. Whatever we're going to do here, whatever the subject matter is, we're going to do it by adding to the whole number of free persons. Now you notice it doesn't say by adding to the whole number of persons. It says free persons. Well, if there's free persons, then there's got to be an opposite to that, doesn't there? Wouldn't those be unfree persons? Now you'll notice there's a comma there, and it says, including those bound to service for a term of years. Aha! Bound to service. Free persons bound to service. Now, you take a pie, and you got a whole pie, right? If you have a whole pie and you draw a line down the middle of it, you got 2 halves. And so here you've got a whole number of free persons, and you've got a whole number of free persons, some of which are bound to service for a term of years. There's 2. And then it goes on to say, and excluding Indians not taxed. It doesn't say, and excluding Indians. It says, excluding Indians not taxed. Now, if you've got some Indians that aren't taxed, then you've got to have some Indians that aren't taxed. Otherwise, you just say, excluding Indians. Because that's the way common sense, reason, and logic would tell us to write the sentence. And these people knew and understood reason, logic, and common sense, and they knew how to read and write. And then it's got a comma there, and it goes on. It says 3/5 of all other persons. It doesn't say, and all other persons. It just says 3/5. So there's a particular methodology for dividing up all of the rest of the persons. So if you got 3/5 of all other persons, you got to have 2/5 of all other persons, don't you? There's 6 categories, 6, 5 and 1, 6. 6 categories of persons in the abstract. And they had something called slaves in those days, those black people that were picking cotton in Mississippi, and Georgia, North and South Carolina, and planting corn and tobacco. Now, didn't they? And did they have corporations, trusts, foundations? Did those people know what they were? Yeah, they did. Yeah, they knew what corporations, trusts, and foundations were. So when you start adding up the number of categories or classifications of persons that come under the Constitution, you find that there is a whole plethora of people under the Constitution, the highest status of which is this thing called the free man or the free person. Natural persons, citizens. Well, it goes on through there, and you got section 3 and 4 and 5 and 7, and goes on and on. And now there's a real nifty little section over here called Article 1, Section 10, which is really a weird thing to be saying and talking about. This is an amazing section of the Constitution. In Section 10 of Article 1, this is on page 17, there's some more things to underline, and they go on like this. It says, no state shall. Why don't you underline the words no state shall? Have you ever had a kid, and you tell the kid, kid, you shall not eat food in the living room? That's kind of an absolute. You say, no kid shall eat food in the living room. I've got some kids, and they eat food in the living room. And the rule is, thou shalt not eat food in the living room. Now, once in a while, they'll eat food in the living room, and I catch them. And when I catch them, don't I catch them breaking the law? Isn't that what you call lawlessness and law-breaking? Well, let's see now. We've got no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation with a semicolon. Now, let's suppose that the state of Nebraska entered into a treaty with the province of British Columbia to formulate or to put together an army to attack North Dakota. Wouldn't that be a violation of Article 1, Section 10? Yeah, I think it would, and I think any rational person who could look at this and read this and say, no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation. Well, let's keep reading on and let's see if our government officials, our government, anywhere at any time, breaks the law and violates the terms and conditions of this contract in the way that maybe I broke when I promised to bring you your hay on the 24th and I was 6 days late and I said I would deliver alfalfa for $10,000 and I'm delivering moldy grass hay for $14,000. Let's see what goes on here. Well, I haven't seen any of our states do that, so we go on and it says grant letters of marque or reprisal, coin money. Now let me see now. Coin money. No, I don't think I've seen them do that. Emit bills of credit. Bills of credit. Huh. Gee, I wonder if California was emitting bills of credit when they couldn't pay their bills last month and they were issuing these vouchers. Well, I don't know. Let's go on. Make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. I think I'll underline that one because my government here in Idaho, now I can't speak for you if you're out there in Illinois or Texas, but up here in Idaho, these guys accept and demand things called Federal Reserve notes for filing fees in the courts and for paying taxes on property and do all kinds of things like that. And they authorize it and they let it happen and they just sit here and they don't do anything about it. And I've been complaining for a long time and they tell me I'm a kook and a nut. Pass any bill of attainder or an ex post facto law. Let's see, ex post facto law. Gosh, I wonder if there's been any laws passed after the fact. Well, that happens, I guess, once in a while. I can't think of one. Or law impairing the obligation of contracts. Oh, or law impairing the obligation of contracts. Or grant any title of nobility. Well, when it talks about laws impairing the obligation of contracts, I think our state here in Idaho is guilty. I think that we allow the impairing of the obligation of contracts by issuing or allowing irredeemable paper money to pay off contracts that are negotiated in cheaper and cheaper dollars. And I think that's a violation of our Constitution. Now, of course, I'll leave it up to you to decide what you think.